Hi, everyone. Welcome to the OnPoint podcast. Today, I got to spend time with Kjersten Teeter, Head of Medical Excellence, Operational Excellence, and Strategic Planning at Blueprint Medicines. We discussed the importance of reporting within medical excellence and the importance of being able to truly tell a story about the work that's being done in medical affairs. I really enjoyed my time with Kjersten, and I'm sure that you're going to enjoy this episode. Welcome to OnPoint, the Medical Excellence podcast, where we talk to pharma leaders about how to build highly effective medical affairs organizations. I am so excited for this conversation with Kjersten Teeter from Blueprint Medicines. Kjersten and I have known each other for a long time, and today's discussion is going to hit home to so many of you that are listening, and it's about reporting. Medical excellence plays like this really kind of important role, not just on the technical part of like what charts we need to make and what reports we have to build, but like, why are we building them? What standards are we holding our teams to? How do we know if we're doing a good job or not? And so I'm thrilled to have Kjersten join us. Kjersten is the head of medical affairs operations at Blueprint. Before that, we worked together at Sanofi, and the conversation just seems to continue. So welcome, Kjersten, and would love if you could just tell everybody a little bit about your background and why are you doing this? Why medical operations?
Thanks for having me, Scott. So as you mentioned, I'm Kjersten Teeter, and I'm the head of Medical Affairs, Operational Excellence, and Strategic Planning at Blueprint Medicines. I've been in industry, industry itself, if we think about the pharmaceutical side of the industry, for, more than a decade at this point, and in in the broader industry, including academia, for more than 20 years. So I do have experience both on the investigator side of things, the academic side of developing those key research questions, driving those strategic conversations, and then also on the industry side, really thinking about why we do what we do, what patients need, and how we develop medications to really suit the needs of our physicians, patients, and also our patient caregivers.
Love it. Well, Kjersten, out of all of the things that you could be doing with that background, why medical operations? Why in this space of helping build the effective organization?
I think because being on the academic side, you get in this bureaucratic grind. It's really hard to move science forward. You have these great key research questions, things that really matter, and it's hard to just move them forward in a meaningful way. Sometimes it means you need an industry partner to help fund your research, but sometimes you also just need other thought partners to help you develop more broadly the science that you're investing in. I happen to really love the project management process and operational components that go into those. Being in a bureaucratic engine, there's nothing that's more, I guess, devastating than seeing projects not move forward to their full potential in a meaningful way and in a timely way. And so I've really built my career on creating operational effectiveness and efficiencies to make that a little bit easier, not only for us in industry, but also for our academic partners, so that we actually reach patients where they are and when they need us.
Love that. There's so many things we could have chosen to talk about together, right? Because there's the process improvement, the technology that you use, the training that you've been giving, the support. But out of all of those things, the thing that is really kind of top of mind for you right now is about reporting and analytics. And so I'd love to maybe just start by kind of asking, both in your current role and the past, why is that such an important part of medical operations and creating this visibility into the work that happens?
Yeah, I think we focus a lot on the what, like what we need to do and, a little bit on how we need to get there. But I think we also really need to focus on the why we do what we do and how do we know that it matters. The so what. So why does this matter to anybody and how we're getting there? So when we think about reporting, it's not just numbers on a page. It's not just patients in a clinical trial. It's not just, how long did it take us to execute a contract? How much money are we spending? That's important. But, we do need to keep track of all of those things. But why does it matter and who does it matter to? So when you think about reporting, I think about it in a much more holistic fashion. It has to tell a story. The numbers on the page have to have impact.
Okay.
Otherwise, why are we doing what we're doing? We're not sure if we're moving the
Mm,
needle. How broadly are we moving the needle? Are we moving it in the right direction? Are we getting the information out there in a timely way? Are we addressing those gaps? Are we really meeting the needs of our patients? Are we meeting them where they are? Do they need, more access to testing? And how do we know that? We know that through, qualitative and quantitative analyses. So why does it matter is why I really like lean into reporting, because it has a story and that story means something beyond just dollars and cents.
love it. So let's drill into that story a little bit,
Yeah.
okay? Because you just listed a whole lot of parts to the story, everything from the strategic impact that might take a year or more to
Yeah.
see to what do I have to get done today to know if I'm on track. So let's maybe start at the basic and move to the more or sophisticated, right? Because I see most people when they sit down to do reporting, they just need to start with basics like operational visibility into the systems and processes. So start there. Tell us a little bit about kind of what are the stories that you need to tell to help people know what to do today and if we're on track or not.
Yeah, I think that when we think about reporting and you think about process, the process has a story. So you have to know all the steps in a process, and also you have to know if they're effective steps. So if we're thinking about, let's take contracting, it's a really easy scenario. Most of us have done some form of contracting in one way or
Mhm.
another. If you think about the timeline for negotiation, you think about all the steps and all the parties on both sides of the contract. If we're not moving things quickly, there needs to be a story behind that.
Mm,
Metrics and reporting are really important to tell that story. It's not just somebody, sitting on their hands and just not moving it forward. It could be a true um, disconnect in some of the language that's included in the contract, where it may require additional outside legal counsel support or IP
mm,
negotiation, or maybe you're just not getting the milestones right. It's not aligning to the strategic imperatives of a research study, or perhaps you're still negotiating the terms around photo release for
yeah.
an activity in education. So there are so many components that go into this, and those numbers tell a story, and those timelines are important to show that you're, number one, adhering to your process. But it also is a really good way to understand if your process just isn't working in the way in which you intend. Is there some efficiency that you can build into your process? So when I think about that from like a
Yeah.
nuts and bolts, like you get down to, does your process work and does it work well?
Absolutely love that. So many times when I've seen people start a process improvement, the first step that they take is like sticky notes on the wall. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like we have a process. Let's go look at the data and
Yeah.
see kind of what the steps are. And I love that you picked contracting. So we have a 6-person HCP contracting team that did over 3,000 contracts. And the reason that they were able to do that is exactly what you said around creating this visibility into the process. And when we first took it over 14% of the contracts were taking more than 6 months to execute.
Yeah.
And we were able to bring all of the outliers down. So no contract was taking more than 3. And on an average, it was about 1.5. But like if you don't see all of those steps and have the reporting and the visibility, you can't fix it.
Exactly. And that right there was your impact. Like you truly addressed the so what in all of that. And it starts with the data.
Yeah, and we got the so what, but I love your so what, right? What is the impact that that experience has on that relationship with the HCP?
Oh, that's key. I mean, it makes or breaks a relationship. It really does. And a lot of times they don't even understand the process of their own institution. And you find
Mm,
yourself in a position of educating them as well on why it takes so long. Kind of what are the sticking points? Like, where can we improve? And I do find that sometimes we often engage in that like process improvement with the institutions as well. And we say,
mm.
next time, let's engage in these steps to minimize the amount of time and the impact to the institution, but also the impact to our business, and how we communicate and better preserve that relationship. Because there's nothing worse than killing a relationship because something takes too long or we feel like we're operating on different priority schedules. Um,
Absolutely.
so it's just that those numbers are powerful. They really are.
All right. So let's do two things. Let's start with because we've worked together and we've both
Mm,
implemented reporting in the past. Again, sticking on this operational reporting piece. Let's start by talking about what the common challenges are when you're first getting started,
mm.
and then we'll get into, well, how do we go about building reports and reporting to overcome those challenges? So let's start,
Yeah.
and we can both share some. But we go first. What are some of the challenges when you were first walking into an organization, going, "There's no visibility." Um,
Yeah.
Start writing stuff down.
Um, a lot of times the biggest challenge that you're going to have is a disconnect in the amount of information or the types of information that people want. They
Okay.
want different kinds of information. They want different levels of information. They want different kinds of transparency or different levels of transparency. Your executive leadership is not going to necessarily want to see what your project managers need to see.
Mm.
And so, how do you really define reporting and think about your data in a way that's meaningful across a spectrum? That's really hard coming into a brand new organization or coming into reporting. If you've never done operations before and you've never done project work before, this can seem really overwhelming. You're like, wow, there's 87 different data points we can choose from. What really is the most meaningful is going to move the needle and is going to tell the story that we want to tell, create the narrative that we need to create internally. And then how do we go about, aligning on that across the organization in a meaningful way, so that people truly are seeing that they're getting what they need to do their jobs and do them well.
I I can't agree more. Like, starting with the audience and what do they need in order to make decisions is key. And most of the time when I look at reports that companies have, they've only focused on one audience, and that's like the senior person, right? So one or two people, and what do they need to know? But then it doesn't cascade to, what do I need to know in my job to notify me? Like, a classic example is when, take a CRM report, right? Like, everybody reports on how many people did you talk to.
Mhm.
Nobody remembers to create a list of the people you haven't talked to.
Yeah. That's true. I think that's incredibly important when we think about KOL engagement. We may start with like a key list of HCPs that we definitely want to talk about, and we want to talk to, and we want to engage with. But I think we fail to think about who we haven't met with yet
Mhm.
and what is going to drive that experience. Like, how do we get there? And I think that's where we need to really think about those gaps. Those gaps constantly exist and they constantly evolve. And I think that's the one cool thing about data is the data always exists. It's just about what we choose to do with it, how we
Right.
choose to pull it, and how we choose to interpret it and how we report it out. So I think we also have to remain really vigilant and flexible.
Hmm.
It could be, again, CRM reporting. It's great to know what we've talked about, the insights that we've generated, but what haven't we done yet? What work is there
Yeah.
still to do?
So one of the other challenges that I see, and I'd love to kind of find out from you how you would overcome this,
Mm,
is not having true champions
mm,
for the report, right? And the report becomes something that's happening to you. And I always know that it didn't go right when you're at the big rollout meeting and the head of medical affairs or the TA head stands up and says, "Let me introduce you to medical excellence or medical operations." They're going to tell you what you're being held accountable to and what your reports are going to be.
You and I've been in this boat together. We've been here. And it really is hard when you don't have a champion, you truly are flying blind. And you can do as many stakeholder interviews as you want and still miss the mark.
Mhm.
And it really is so important to ensure that you have a champion at the top, the person who's really going to drive it across. You can drive it as deep as you want, but somebody, especially at a leadership level, they need to drive it across the entirety of the leadership, make sure they have buy-in at their level as well. And absent of that, we never truly know if we're giving the organization exactly what they need. And then you're back at, ground zero, recreating the wheel, rethinking about everything that you've pulled in and trying to, backpedal as quickly as possible while, driving your teams absolutely bananas to get to where we need to be. The identification of a champion up front is by far the most important component of ensuring that you're going to be reporting and reporting well on exactly what needs to be reported on. And it is a lesson that I took from our experience and have applied actually in many other areas of my day to day, because it was such a valuable lesson. Buy-in at the beginning is the most important component of reporting.
Yeah, yeah. There's a saying that if you don't get the joke, you won't laugh at the punchline,
Yes.
right? And so coming to somebody with the answer, all the charts and all the lists, and without knowing what the setup is and why it's going to be
Yeah.
valuable,
Yeah.
never works.
It never works. And we may have got the metrics right, but we just didn't get the impact quite right. We didn't get the why or the so what. It's just something, it's a learning process. And I think we all have them in our careers. Nobody is immune to, to these types of learning
Yeah.
opportunities. And it's one that honestly is probably the most valuable in this area of work, is those misses. You learn the most, I think, from the misses,
Yeah.
and where you can improve in the future.
Wonderful. Let's give everybody kind of a real life example, dig into kind of the how here. So you have a integrated medical dashboard that tells the story of operations and SciComm and field and all of the
Mhm.
pieces together. Pick one and just walk us through how you developed that story. How did you go about figuring out what is the story that needs to be told and how can you use data to tell the story?
Yeah, I think, oh gosh, there's so many to choose from. We'll go with field because field has probably got the most robust set of information. It's probably the area that, generates kind of the most interesting data. So when we thought about that, we really thought about the key activities. We have a system, we have a Viva CRM. We have this amazing field team that goes out, meets with our KOLs on a regular basis. They're bringing in these amazing insights. They're having these wonderful, interactions. They're holding these great activities. They're meeting at congresses. So all this great bolus of work that needs to come together in a really meaningful way, but in a way that's not Viva.
Mm.
That's really easy to report out on, has great visuals, but tells a story just by looking at a few key components, like looking at the number of interactions we had in a month to know if we're hitting our interaction targets and our goals there. What type of amazing insights? We have this amazing integrated dashboard. We now have LCAI that sits on top of it to help us really take that and mine out those really key pieces that are going to speak to the gaps that still exist within our data generation and our scientific contextualization. So it really is a powerful, powerful tool that I can actually digest into just a few slides that tell an incredible story. We can either create a narrative on top of or let those insights speak for themselves. But it really does show the benefit of an effective field team and the power of going out and generating all of this amazing data with all these incredible HCPs that treat these rare patients that
Mm.
desperately need support from industry partners in the development of drugs. It's just such an exciting platform to see all of that data that we've synthesized come together in such a meaningful way that's digestible across the entirety of our organization from the top down.
It really is a nice solution, and and I love that engaging with the field team as an example, it moved from we're counting how many interactions because we don't trust you or because everybody's remote. Like there's all this fear around why you're counting things.
Yeah.
But once it was contextualized into this story of, hey guys, we're trying to make this impact in the community, interactions just represents how many opportunities do we have to do that? And
Yeah.
then to go from that to, well, who did you have those interactions with? Did we prioritize the most effective people? Because there's always going to be more HCPs you could choose to engage with than you'll ever have the time to engage with. So did we prioritize the best? And then how did we use those opportunities? What topics? And then, as you were saying, getting into the insights, like what did we learn? And when
Yeah.
you look at all that on one page to be able to see we prioritized the right people, we had lots of opportunities to engage with them. Here's how we use those opportunities, and here's what we learned. Now you've got a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And that data is so powerful. And I think that we minimize the importance of
Mm.
all of that data together and collectively what it tells us.
Yep. It is really, really cool. What has been your experience with the teams that have now gone through this process? They
Mm.
have a story laid out in the data.
Yeah.
How are they using it? How do you know if it was accepted and useful and valuable to them?
Yeah, so we have many touch points. So we have, these monthly insight reports that go out. So we're seeing that field data in real time. We're seeing those insights that are being generated. We also have a lot of opportunity to report to our senior leadership through quarterly reporting. So we know that the data it matters to them because they'll come back and they'll ask us questions. They'll be like, "Tell me about that IST. What is this medical education opportunity that we have in our CME space? Like, tell me more about that." So you know that they're reading it. And if they're reading it, then it means something to them. And we're doing exactly what we intended to do, which was provide transparency, communicate the importance, and also showing up as a really cohesive medical organization in support of the broader business.
Awesome. Couldn't just like we have to put those bullets in the show notes. Like that is what good looks like. We have to list them, right?
Yes.
So here's one of the ongoing debates and questions in medical affairs reporting.
Yeah.
Um, do you report on actuals only, or do you
Mm.
also have goals? And how do you set those goals in a fair and useful way?
That's a great question. So, right now, ours are really only set on actuals. But as you've been involved with us in the very recent engagements that we've had with your team, we are starting to look at those goals. We are really starting to look at what we've included in our medical affairs plan annually. All of those tactics, like how are we actually executing against those? How well are we doing? It's not just about the actuals, because the actuals are important, but if you don't know what they're leveling up to, why does it matter? So I think for us, that's the biggest kind of shift
Mm.
in structure and mentality and the way that we think about our data and reporting is we're now starting to make that transition into the why does it matter and who's it
Yeah.
important to?
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I don't think that you could have started with we're going to set a bunch of goals for you to hit without having the
No.
data and the details of where we are today.
No, absolutely not. No, I would love to say that we could have had that much forethought, and that it would have been as impactful as it has been to kind of work backwards and work backwards into it.
Mhm.
But I do think that you need the data up front to understand the questions that you're truly asking, and are we getting that right in terms of the reporting as well? Does the data actually work to answer that question for us? Or do we need to think about it in a different way? Do we need to capture something differently in order to ensure that we're truly seeing the impact of all this amazing work that the team is doing?
Awesome. Let's change gears a minute because I reflect back to this conversation we had
Mhm.
where we did all this operational reporting because people didn't have visibility into where things were in the process. We didn't know where to fix the process. We couldn't communicate how many of anything we were doing, and we
Yeah.
kind of got all of that fixed. And then at the end, somebody goes, "Oh, well, have we made an impact in the medical community?" Like, that wasn't the question we
That
were
wasn't the
trying
remit.
to.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about kind of your discoveries about the difference between operational reporting
Mm.
and impact reporting.
Yeah, so we can talk about the numbers all day long. We can tell you how long it took in a contract. We can tell you how many months it's taken to enroll a study, how long it's going to be until an IST reads out. But at the end of the day, when you think about the gaps and how we plan against our gaps and we look at our data generation plan end to end over the life cycle of our drug, you start to realize that you need to know if what you've done is moved the needle. So
Mhm.
you have to get away from kind of the nuts and bolts of the process, the nuts and bolts of the counting, if you will, number of patients, enrollment time, FPI, LPO. And you have to get into the, well, why does it matter?
Mm.
And that's really where you have to kind of shift from just the operational reporting to the strategic output. And so that's really where the impact comes in, is thinking about it from that perspective. Did we do what we said we were going to do? Did we deliver on it in a meaningful way? And then how did we deliver on it? Like, tell me, about that too.
Yeah.
And thinking about that narrative. So if we think about, an IST, we'll use that as the example here. If we think about an IST and we think, okay, it's a strategic gap. We identified it in our area of interest last year. It's going to read out in 2025. Um, did it actually deliver what it was supposed to deliver on? Did it deliver when the data mattered?
Mhm.
And then what was the impact of that data generation to the broader scientific community? And I think that that really gets the key components of impact and how you have to think about the operational strategy that comes with just the operational reporting. You have to think about the strategy up front as
Right.
well. And that's something that we're doing now.
Yeah, so there's two things that I think were inherent in what you said that are huge challenges when you get into impact reporting. And the first
Mhm.
is that impact is never the things you do.
Right.
Never,
No.
right? It's always the result on someone or
Yes.
something of the things you
Yes.
do.
Yep.
And so to say, what is your impact? The subject of the conversation is the wrong thing. It's what was the impact on the medical community, on the patient, on the HCP. And
Yeah.
so we have to change that line. And then the other thing that I think is always super, super, super challenging is that there is medical affairs is a system that works together to have an impact. So even your example of an IST, that IST didn't have any impact by itself, right? The
Right.
IST and the fact that you could publish and then that you could educate people on it and that you could get insights about it, like all of that works together to have an
Yes.
impact. And so you need something higher level than what you would look for in a department.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right.
It's so powerful to think about it that way, and I think that's the way that we haven't been thinking about it, even as a broader, like, if we think about medical operations as a whole, as an industry, that's a shift in mentality for us across the board. And so I think it's definitely kind of leveling up what it is that we do and the impact that operations can bring to an organization is to think about that strategic landscape upfront. The so what, why does it matter, and what kind of impact are you truly going to have by doing all these different types of research and programs across the medical affairs landscape.
Agreed. I mean, at the end of the day, and tell me if you can think of others, but I think there's only two true impacts that medical affairs can drive. You can change a belief or you could change
Mhm.
an action, right?
Yeah,
And either I'm changing a belief, so I did not believe there's an unmet need and now I do. I don't believe that this MOA would accomplish something or I do, or I
yeah.
believe this clinical outcome and then do I actually apply that in practice? You know,
The disease management practice is just, I think, almost as much as like the sentiment change. So,
yeah.
again, does the sentiment change actually trigger an action? So, did that matter? That change in thought process, that belief system, did that actually change and impact a patient's well-being, going forward?
So you said that this is kind of something that medical operations can bring this mindset shift into the organization.
Yeah.
Tell me about the conversations you've had across Blueprint when you've revealed this belief, this mindset with your leaders.
Yeah, I think the the first thing that I experienced is a little bit of resistance. It seems really, really, really hard to like drill down to that impact, to think about taking the data and
Mhm.
getting to a way to measure impact because it is very different than the way that we think about those counts. It's different than,
Mhm.
a contracting time frame. It really is like, are we seeing perhaps like an increase in diagnosis? Like, are we seeing, broader use of a sponsored testing program? Are we seeing, the changes in, diagnostic codes? So are more patients showing up in like the Medicare data as, having an ICD-10 code of, whatever disease it happens to be? I think that thinking about that and it's just such a shift in the way we actually think about doing what we do that there is kind of that resistance. It just
Mm.
seems so hard, and it's just more work. But at the end of the day, when you talk to leaders and you really engage in a robust dialogue about why it's so important and how it's also another missing X factor into what we
Mhm.
do, they really do start to see the importance of investing in it. And I think that has been a really positive shift within my own organization is going from the, I don't know if we have time or appetite
Mhm.
to do this to, no, it's important. We have to invest in this. So that's definitely been a monumental shift over even this last 6 months to, getting the teams in the room to actually talk about what we want to tackle. Like, what are we going after first? What are the top priorities within our medical affairs plan that we want to demonstrate impact on? And how are we going to
Mhm.
measure it?
It's so inspiring. And, it sounds like it's not just inspiring to us, but inspiring to them. Why did you choose to get into medical affairs? It's not an easy job.
It's, it's not, but it's always about patients. And at the end of the day, the impact matters to patients.
Absolutely. If we can use our story, our analytic story, to reconnect the thing that I wake up and have to do every day to the
Hmm.
purpose of why I do it, there's
Yeah.
no better motivator than that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Purpose driven process is what I like to call it. So, you have to have your why. And we all wake up with our why. We do this every day. And I think that that really does motivate kind of these shifts in thought process and like the willingness to go a little bit further and stretch just a little bit further to get exactly what we know is going to get us to our why.
Absolutely love that. I want to just ask you maybe one more question, and it's not just about reporting.
Okay.
Okay, you are in a medical operations, medical excellence role where your job is to build effective
Mhm.
medical organizations, right?
Yes.
I see medical teams becoming better and better every year. They're becoming more strategic. They're becoming more
Mhm.
digitally savvy. So, as a medical excellence leader, for you to
Mhm.
stay ahead of that curve so that you can continue bringing them value as they get better, what is on your personal radar for the next year or two around the things you want to get better at that you are prioritizing for your own development as a medical excellence leader?
Yeah, so that's a really exciting topic actually. So I'm a big proponent of taking every opportunity to get education everywhere I can. I think the biggest thing that my team and I are investing in, and really heavily investing in, we've identified a few like user case opportunities to leverage AI to do our jobs better. And so I know AI is a hot topic. Some companies are investing in it, some companies are locking it down. But Blueprint, thankfully, has been, really supportive in these
Mhm.
types of endeavors and providing us with solutions that can support engaging in AI and really driving these projects forward. It's amazing how we can, utilize. We have LCAI, which I think was kind of dipping our toe in the AI platform a little bit, but really seeing the power of what that can do to kind of level up a medical organization has been really key, especially in operations where it's really nice to be able to pull together data from, other industry sources to understand like, am I doing this the best possible way that I can be? What
Mm.
are my blind spots? What can I be doing better? And it really becomes about driving an effective organization, an efficient organization that really is going to like power through what maybe are stumbling blocks
Mm.
and finding, broader solutions to problem solving. And so for us, investing over the next year to 2 years and really gaining that AI experience and understanding the power and what it can do for us is where we're throwing our time and kind of energy.
Well, it is certainly a fun thing to spend time
Yes.
learning.
Yes.
And it's been fun, in my world because we've built and provided, an AI solution in Elsie. I get to learn with you, right?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the thing that is most interesting to me about this because AI is not new, but this version of it that's
Mhm.
accessible to you and me, and not just a data scientist, is really new. And the biggest thing that I've learned is because it's accessible and because it's fast, it's better to be iterative than perfect.
Yes.
And if you can just start, trying it, testing it, fail, try, test, fail, win, right? Like
Yeah.
that is so much fun and such a great way to learn.
It really is. I mean, we're having a great time like querying and requerying over and over again just to kind of see the power that these solutions really do provide for us, not only in reporting, but in understanding the landscape around us as well.
Love it. Thank you so much. I know everybody's going to find this session so valuable. Kirsten, you are very generous with your time. I know that you've coached and mentored uh, folks throughout the year. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you and ask any questions, would LinkedIn be the best or another?
Yeah.
What's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way. Super responsive. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions or, anything that you might want to learn about. I'm always happy to educate as well. So
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you
thank
so much. It was so much fun talking to you, and I can't wait to see what you do over the next year.
Thanks, Scott. It was great to be here.